Have you ever wanted to buy a telescope but never knew which kind to buy? What makes a good telescope? Buying a telescope is an important decision for astronomers, but the different varieties may be very overwhelming for some people. Find out in this video to see what kind of telescope fits your potential needs.
3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Wow, there are other people working on this.
The first successful telescope was used in 16... Turby, oh my goodness, my cat is ruining my shot. Oh my goodness, Turby, since you want to be in the shot so bad, then fine. Here you go. Look at the camera. Is this what you wanted? Is this what you wanted? Anyway. The first successful telescope was used in 1610 by Galileo. It is actually unclear about who actually created the first telescope, but many believe it was Hans Lippershey, mainly because he was the first one to try to obtain a patent for it. The first telescope used by Galileo is called a refractor telescope. These telescopes are still used today, commonly found in your local department stores. For serious astronomers, I do not recommend these types of telescopes, mainly because of how the light passes through the lens. The colors seen when looking through the eyepiece do not fully merge together, creating kind of like a halo light. You can correct this by purchasing different lenses that you can put in the optical path. This increases your light transmission and it can fix your light issue, but it can be fairly expensive. It is a good starting telescope for your kids if they're curious about studying the night sky, but for serious astronomers, I do not recommend this telescope unless you want to pay a lot of money. Now that we've covered refractor telescopes, let's cover reflector telescopes. I actually have one myself, right here. You can see it's very bulky, which is one of the main disadvantages to one of these, but I love this telescope a lot. These bad boys are called Newtonian reflectors. And why is that? Well, my boy Sir Isaac Newton was the first person to successfully build a reflecting telescope. Newton used a mirror at a 45-degree angle, and the reason it's called a reflecting telescope is because it takes the light from the primary mirror, sends it back to the 45-degree angle mirror, and sends it back up through an eyepiece, like right here. You can't really see it, but it's here. The eyepiece of the telescope, in my opinion, is one of the most interesting parts of the telescope because that's the part of the telescope that does the magnification. A common misconception is that the things in space are very small, but in reality, they're actually quite dim. And you can tell that when looking through the eyepiece. The mirror being in the very middle obstructs light entering at a very minimum. The more light collecting area, also known as an aperture, objects in space can be better seen, like galaxies and nebula. Like I said, some disadvantages, it can be large and bulky, so if you want to travel around with your telescope, then this isn't the telescope for you. But if you want to keep it in one place and look at the stars from like a room, then this could be the perfect telescope for you. Also, because of the 45-degree mirror inside, it may also cast a shadow that makes viewing details very difficult to see sometimes. Astrophotography, in my opinion, also looks very nice on this kind of telescope. Here are some images that I took using my DSLR camera. Now we are going to get into the more intricate telescopes. Now, if that was confusing for you, just you wait. We are getting into what are called bending light telescopes. What is that? The next telescope is called a Cassegrain reflector, and it folds light. There are so many variations of this type of telescope, one being the Schmidt Cassegrain. The reason it is called a folded light telescope is because light is reflected so many times in this kind of telescope. There are so many mirrors being used that it goes from one place to another, and out through the eyepiece. It's crazy. The two main differences between the Newtonian and Cassegrain is that the Cassegrain scopes are very portable and less demanding of storage space. So as I said, if you want to travel around, then this guy isn't the one for you, and you might actually want a folded light telescope, which is the Cassegrain. The Cassegrain with benefits come with disadvantages as well, like all telescopes. When looking through the eyepiece, the stars might seem a little bit smudged, kind of like how a comet may seem, except it stays in one spot. This happens because of something called spherical aberration. There's a solution to this problem. You can purchase a corrector plate for your telescope. This is a lens that intentionally distorts the light passing through it to an amount equal, but opposite to the distortion caused by the spherical primary mirror, which gives it the smudged look. It allows for two optical surfaces working together to more or less nullify the distortion caused by the spherical primary. If you are looking for something with a smaller budget, I recommend a refractor telescope, which, as I said, you can find in your department stores. But if you want something more advanced like the Newtonian, you will have to purchase this online. None of these options have to be your final option. You can start with a starter telescope, which can be a refractor or a reflector. There are a lot of different types of telescopes that you can choose, but it doesn't have to be your final decision. You can save up and buy a much better telescope later if that is your desire. One last piece of advice I would like to give to you is when you purchase your telescope, buy the largest aperture that your budget will allow, because that will give you the best results. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it gave you some information that you can use if you want to buy a telescope. So thank you for watching. See you next week.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Asking Questions. Make sure to stop by next week to watch an episode about astrophotography.